Hello everyone, P. McGee here with another draft battle analysis video and recap. This time looking at my week 5 match in the UDL against TheOnlyOne and his Rock'em Sock'em Rotoms. As it stands, I am 3-1 in this league, having bounced back nicely from a week 1 loss and getting 3 consecutive wins. I am still trying to get better execution of my gameplay. I have been particularly sloppy in this league thus far, but have been able to skirt disaster, outside of week 1, and even going so far as to get a 6-0 last week despite the sloppy play. But I'm looking to keep this win streak going, keep this good differential going, and try to continue to make good strides in this league. So before we dive into this match, we're going to take a look at the options that he had available to him and then the pieces I brought to best address it. He's got a pretty scary offensive core. The Celesteela and the Tapu Koko are particularly difficult to deal with. Very dangerous group of Mons. The Charizard, Mega Charizard X is normally particularly scary, just because a Dragon Dance can lead to a very quick sweep with that thing. Thankfully, my Pyukumuku is pretty well suited to manage that Mega Zard, but he's got some pretty good defensive pieces as well. Tangrowth is hard to push through. Blastoise can be difficult to break. And then some fun offensive pieces in the Crocodile. And then Halucha is the best pairing with Coco. Or I should reverse that. Coco is the best terrain setter for Halucha to benefit from, just because Coco has screens. Coco has special pivot, which feeds nicely into physical sweep options with Halucha. So they're a very scary tandem, and checking them is going to be very, very important. And then Halucha 2 has access to Mold Breaker, so it could theoretically not run an Unburdened set and run a Swords Dance set as a way to kind of blast through Unaware on Pyukumuku. I think people don't always realize this, but Unaware does ignore Mold Breaker does ignore Unaware, so you do get the Swords Dance buffs on a Halucha if you try to set up in front of a Pyukumuku if you're running that ability. So there is some consideration to that set maybe coming out, and just me needing to be cautious of it. With that said, though, the team I brought to kind of help manage this was, nothing too surprising. Diance's here again to do normal Diancie things. Moonblast, Mystical Fire, Power Gem, Speed crept in a way to outspeed base 100, which is notably the Charizard. And then as a fourth move, I'm opting for Terrain Pulse. So the interesting fun part about Terrain Pulse, if I can manage to pull it off, is that Tapu Koko would set Electric Terrain, so that makes Terrain Pulse a 100 base power electric move, which then also gets the terrain buff of 33%. So it hits as like a 133 base power move. Very notable for the Blastoise, who otherwise has a easy time kind of taking a hit or two from the Mega Diancie. So with Terrain Pulse, I'm in actually a pretty good spot to one-hit KO some variants of full HP Blastoise. If it's like full HP, mostly defense, or more mixed, then there's a chance I could one-hit KO with Terrain Pulse. So it's a good way of catching that off guard if he tries to sit in front of Diancie and he has left terrain on the field for me to work with. Zapdos, very more specially bulky in this matchup with some defensive investment as well. The 256, I believe, is to creep past the Modest Nature Blastoise at max speed. So and also creeps past, just by fortune, max speed Celesteela. But really, the big thing about that is I'm trying to have a check to Shell Smash Blastoise, and so this being able to outspeed it and either Volt Switch or Toxic it is really helpful. It's able to survive a hit at that investment. So I believe Modest +2 Surf from a Blastoise isn't going to one-hit KO the Zapdos. So I have an opportunity to Volt Switch on that to do a lot of damage, or otherwise just kind of work around that. And then the rest just kind of made into bulk, and really just here to get some momentum, clear some hazards in case he tries to set rocks, which Crocodile is well suited to do and likes to generally do. It was a tough consideration as he can only set rocks with the one Mon, so trying to bring a removal item for just one piece of hazard was a tough consideration, but I felt Crocodile had a good enough reason to show up and had fair enough reason to want to set rocks, so I just wanted to be able to check that. The Nidoking, opting for a special set, opting for sub. The nice thing about Nidoking in this matchup is that Tapu Koko has a really hard time pressuring Nidoking. Dazzling Gleam doesn't do a lot. It's immune to electric, takes neutral from the Grass Knot. The only scary Coco sets that can pressure me are something like a physical Brave Bird set, which is unlikely, a Combine stored power set, which would probably take too long to get off the ground, but could be very dangerous if he gets it going. And I believe a Nature's Madness set just to smack me for 50% on an obvious switch in. I think all of those are viable sets, but they all restrict Coco's ability to be a good pivot piece in the match. So at the very least, I'm restricting Coco if it decides to bring a counter option for the Nidoking. Going back to it, and Thunderbolt gets the terrain boost, which is notable. Ice Beam is a good way to deal with the Tangrowth, the Crocodile, and then get Zard for neutral damage in case I'm unsure of what it's going to do. So, as well as the Halucha as well, for whatever reason I don't want to click Thunderbolt or I can't. Ice Beam is a good option as well. And then Speed Crept to outspeed, I believe, Adam or Modest Blastoise, as well as what is it? Timid or Jolly Celesteal, that's max speed. So just the ability to go first when it's really relevant too. Oh, got disconnected there for a second. Getting back in. Licky Licky here. Wish Protect Heal Bell set, very especially defensive to help manage Tapu Koko. And then I'm opting for Whirlpool because Whirlpool kind of lets me sit in front of a lot of things and really pressure them in a way that anything else may not be able to. I could run Seismic Toss, which also has value here, but the nice thing about Whirlpool is it can kind of trap some things that can't 1v1 it very well. So I could trap a Coco, I could trap a stalling Celesteela and just kind of pressure that. I could trap Crocodile, who has the ability to pressure me pretty well, or Blastoise. Just a good way to hit a lot of those mons and kind of put them in an uncomfortable trapping position where I can Wish Protects Heal Bell, stall them out to death in case they're also a stallier set. Just an interesting way, I think, where I can kind of mitigate their effectiveness and I'll let Licky Licky kind of just sit there in front of them. Pyukumuku, I'm trying to do the same set again. It's had a lot of success in the past, both with me and with other coaches, in terms of being a good block soaker against Celesteela matchups. Celesteela has a really hard time doing its Automizer, Meteor Beam sets in front of a Pyukumuku because it can't deal with the unaware. Toxic sets are effective, but as long as you have Heal Bell, you can trade Toxics and then get your Heal Bell onto the Pyukumuku and fix it up. Either way, Pyukumuku has a pretty good matchup against the Celesteela as long as it's not a sub Celesteela. So we're trying to bring this set back again. Pretty heavy on the defensive side to help deal with both the Crocodile and the Megazard. And even at virtually no investment, it's still in a really good spot to handle Blastoise in case it's a specially offensive one because the Shell Smashes won't count. So it's not that strong. It's only like a 79 or an 81 or something in the special attack stat. Very manageable. And then finally, Silvally Fire, because it has a pretty good matchup overall. Flamethrower is a really good way of getting Tangrowth, really good way of getting Celesteela. Isn't too bothered by Megazard, isn't too bothered by Tapu Koko, and I have other options for the Crocodile and the Blastoise so that I'm not too pressured there. And in case he decided to bring the Escavalier, I needed access to a good fire move because I decided not to run Flamethrower on the Nidoking. So just having access to a usable fire move outside of Diance's Mystical Fire felt really appropriate for this matchup. Pretty invested into the HP stat. Speed crept to get past 256, which I believe is the Blastoise calc, and good defensive investment just to be able to take a Megazard hit and kind of deal with that. And then opting for a Roar set in case something peculiar happens. I've run into it in the past where Megazard is subbed as a way to kind of deal with Pyukumuku a little bit, or maybe Halucha subs, and so this is a good way of roaring them out and making them not a problem. And then Parting Shot as a pivot move as well, and then Flamethrower as just the general stab. So that's the team. Generally, what I'm going for here is a strong defensive backbone with the Licky Licky Pyukumuku, somewhat the Zapdos, and then pressuring hard with the Nidoking and the Diancie when I can get them in safely, and kind of working on the momentum from Zapdos and Silvally to do that. So we'll get into this matchup. Looking at team preview, there's really nothing surprising at all. Tangrowth doesn't show up, which is no shock. It doesn't like the Mega Diancie matchup. It doesn't like the Zapdos matchup. It doesn't like the Nidoking matchup, so it really didn't have reason to show up. Makes perfect sense he did not bring it. Escavalier and Mismagius are pretty low tier mons that don't have a lot of situational value, so it made sense that Blastoise is the sixth piece that shows up here. So really nothing surprising going into the beginning of this match. I'm going to lead my Licky Licky. I was unsure of what his lead would be. I thought he might go for a Coco lead, or he might go for a Celesteela lead, or a Crocodile lead to set rocks immediately. I wasn't suspecting he'd bring Banded Crocodile. That didn't seem like the bring for this matchup, so I felt okay with a Licky Licky lead, even though he's on the SpDef investment side. Um, did I get the Nature Rug again? Hold on. I think I keep making this mistake with my Licky Licky, or I'm just misremembering the ability. No, it's Oblivious. Okay. I did not realize Oblivious was immune to Intimidate as well. That was my own oversight. So anyway, Crocodile goes for the Stealth Rock on turn 1. No surprise, if you're going to lead Crocodile, it's usually a Stealth Rocker. And so Licky Licky is going to go for a Whirlpool Trap here on Crocodile because it's free and easy to do. I can click Protect to get more chip on it. I see that he has Toxic. I'm going to predictively go for I believe, a Wish here because it's a nice, easy, safe thing to do. And then I believe I go for another. Oh, I go for Protect here. So I'm just kind of whittling down this Crocodile while taking no damage. It can Toxic me, which isn't a huge deal because I have Heal Bell to work with. It's gotten out of my Whirlpool trapping now. I'm going to use a Heal Bell here to get myself fixed. And then I'm once again in a position to pretty safely click Whirlpool on the Coco switch out because I don't expect physical Coco, although I perhaps should have scouted for it. Big thing to note here, and I'm not going to probably react to this as well as I should. It did not activate an electric seed here. It didn't show it. So there is real potential. This is a mold breaker Halucha, which could be a real problem here because Halucha has a pretty good speed stat. I didn't bring Greninja because Greninja didn't have a great matchup overall, I felt. And so this Halucha could be in a spot if it's a mold breaker to Swords Dance and pressure really hard because Swords Dance alongside Close Combat, alongside Stone Edge, alongside Brave Bird can pretty much break most of my team if Pyukumuku is not actually able to wall it out. He does in fact go for the Swords Dance, which is the smart thing to do. I'm going to hard switch into Pyukumuku because that's my only real play here. He's going to go for a high jump kick, which only does 34%. Really fortunate that he is either a limber set or an unburdened set. What I think is the case is that he did not realize that Mold Breaker could skirt unburdened, or not unburdened, Mold Breaker could skirt unaware, and so he didn't actually account for that in his prep. Really fortunate for me. Obviously, it's a big flaw in the Pyukumuku play. If people bring Mold Breaker Mons, generally I scout them out pretty well. I did not fully consider that on the Halucha just because I was so honed in on the unburdened sweep sets, and so I was trying to stop that without maybe giving Mold Breaker due consideration. But it's irrelevant as he doesn't bring it. Pyukumuku can very safely stall this out. I recover here. What I should be doing is going for a Toxic here. The Crocodile is not going to break the Pyukumuku. I can just Toxic Crocodile. I know Crocodile is going to Toxic the Pyukumuku, so I should just trade Toxics, come in with my Licky Licky, and then fix it afterwards. Instead, I'm going straight into Licky Licky, which I think is a mistake, just because it slows down the game plan. I'm forced to Heal Bell on this turn. Just a slower process overall. I get close to roll range, which is obviously a concern. So I need to protect here just to give myself a buffer so that I can wish on the next turn and play it extra safe. He goes for another Toxic. I'm going for another Wish. I'm going to Heal Bell here again because I need to. I can't do anything else. It's getting towards a somewhat precarious position. I've used almost half my Heal Bells so far. I still haven't removed this Crocodile from play, so it is a concern. Fortunately, the Coco comes in, and I feel pretty good about Whirlpooling in front of the top of Coco. It just doesn't have a way to pressure me, I feel, that much. And now this Blastoise is going to be impacted by the Whirlpool, and I can protect this a bit. So the Licky Licky is really doing a good job early of just putting a lot of pressure on a lot of his pieces. I've taken 2/3 of the Crocodile's health out. I'm chipping down the Blastoise. The Halucha took a lot of damage from the Licky Licky as well. So a lot of pieces are getting impacted by this Licky Licky play early, which is just really nice for Licky Licky. I'm going for another Wish here. I believe I'm going to Whirlpool here to trap the Crocodile and wrap it up with this Mon. So I just need to Heal Bell on this turn. Unfortunately, he's going to get a free Earthquake on me, and I'm going to be at about half health, which is fine. Not the end of the world. At least Crocodile is out of play. Good notable thing about that is now my Zapdos, once it defogs these mid-game, there's no more hazards to contend with, which is really helpful for me to pivot around with because Still Valley Fire has a hard time hitting the field with these rocks up just because it's going to take that 25% chip. Really beneficial miss by that Toxic right there. So I'm going to get my Licky Licky basically back to full health, which is really helpful for it. and then I can pretty much hard switch. I believe I'm going to go into the Zapdos here as a way to deal with these hazards, because Zapdos' big role in this match is to clear those out. Or I'm going to go into Pyukumuku first to try for a trap set, but he hits the Toxic, so it kind of minimizes Pyukumuku's ability to actually be a wall for that. I'm going to go in with the Zapdos now because I just need to defog these, because once I can defog these, then I can come in with Silvally, who can both pressure it out and pivot. But the hazards are gone, and now I have a free Volt Switch opportunity because Crocodile is dead, so there's no immunity to Volt Switch now. So I can finally get the needed momentum I was looking for to get an offensive piece on the field safely, which has been the issue for the last 5 or 6 turns. I don't know why he brings Charizard in. I think that's a misplay. Gives me a free Diancie window because I know Charizard's choice locked and I'm going to outspeed it. I Mega Evolve here because I needed that damage output on the predict that he was going into Blastoise. I get a really unfortunate roll here. So I did 42 on the first Moonblast and I follow it up with 35 on the second. The really unfortunate thing about that, and I've already run into this problem this season when I was against the Swampert, is now I put the Blastoise into Torrent range where the Torrent ability gets activated. So now the water attacks do even more damage, and I'm going to lose 90% on a Scald here. Really unfortunate. Takes away Diancie's ability to maybe tank a hit later in the game and just kind of mitigates my potency. Tapu Koko comes back out. I don't want to come in with Licky Licky yet. I'm trying to get momentum on my side. So I figure the Tapu Koko might try to Volt Switch here just to gain momentum, or if it Dazzling Gleams, I don't care, or if it Earth, or not Earth Powers, U-turns, I don't care. Nidoking has a really good matchup against the Koko. Now that I've dealt with a couple of his threats, I'm in a really good spot for Nidoking to be oppressive. The Dazzling Gleam only does 23%, which is not enough to break a sub, which is really, really good for Nidoking, who is going to sub freely here. And the big thing that's going on too is I have electric terrain still to work with. So my Thunderbolts are even more powered up right now. So I get the Sheer Force boost, the Life Orb boost, plus the electric terrain boost on a super effective hit on Celesteela, who gets absolutely obliterated by that Thunderbolt. He just gets sent packing. I'm going to Ice Beam here because I figured he was trying to make me guess whether he was going to Mega Evolve or not. And so I didn't want to click Earth Power in case he doesn't Mega. I don't want to click Thunderbolt in case he does Mega. And I didn't pack Sludge Wave. So Ice Beam was the really safe thing because it was always going to be a neutral hit. It does enough damage. Charizard goes down. And then the Koko doesn't have a strong enough move to break my sub. And so I get to pretty freely Earth Power this Koko without any real risk. And then all that's left is the Halucha, and I'm behind a sub, so I'm entirely safe from the Halucha. Really easy opportunity to click Ice Beam Thunderbolt. It's the same impact. And so Nidoking is really well positioned to close that game out, especially after the Crocodile got removed from play, because that was the speed piece that could break my sub, and I couldn't easily one-hit KO. I mean, Ice Beam would have done a lot, but being able to stay behind the sub and outspeed everything was really, really crucial in Nidoking getting those 4 consecutive kills. So it was a really good tag team effort. Licky Licky did a really good job early of breaking pieces down, really killing his momentum, getting Crocodile removed from play. And then Pyukumuku did a little bit of stuff, but nothing too large. And then Zapdos got the necessary defog on there. And then Nidoking really came in and cleaned house. I believe this was my first Silvally bring of the season. Unfortunately, he doesn't hit the field, but I want to at least ensure that people respect it as a mon I might bring and be wary of what kind of sets could show up. I thought the set would be effective. I think it still would have. Flamethrower would have done good work against, Celesteela, the Tapu Koko, and the, Halucha. And then I had Toxic for predictive switch-ins on like the Charizard coming in or the Blastoise coming in. So I was well positioned for the Silvally to be effective, but I did not need it. Nidoking got to showcase why it's a really dangerous mon with really stupid good coverage, and it was able to kind of take over and win that game for me. So I moved to forward one, second consecutive 6-0, so feeling really good about this team. The performance this match was really optimized. I don't think there was a lot of turns I would have changed. I think generally I played through that pretty well. I think the one thing I brought up was the Pyukumuku not using Toxic when it could have. Otherwise, really content with how that game played out. Really content with how the season's developing. I'm at 4-1. I think my play with this team is getting better, and so I'm hoping to keep that going moving forward. And so stay tuned for more on that.